Hi, Virgo Sun and Rising. Welcome to a reading looking at the transits of Neptune and Saturn into Aries. This is going to occur in 2025 for both of these planets. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it starts a whole new cycle. So if you've heard other astrologers kind of oohing and eyeing about that, that's what they're talking about. Plus, these are outer planets doing this. All the outer planets are changing signs. Well, we already had Pluto change into Aquarius, so that's staying put. But, that recently happened. And the point of that is that when these slower moving planets change signs, it just shows that there is change in the air for the collective. For Virgo individuals, this is going to be in your 8th house. And the 8th house is Scorpio's domain in astrology. So it's the area of a transformation. Ultimately, we can call it the area of transformation. It's a bunch of things. It can be other people's money. It can be shared resources. It can be tarot and astrology and other like metaphysical pursuits. But because it's personal transformation, the spiritual practices or belief systems that go along with that are like shamanism and paganism, both of which I think Virgo people would take like a duck to water, in the sense that these are earth religions. So I'm going to start with Neptune, because Neptune goes into Aries on March 30th. And this is the time in the recording where I say you're going to have to look at your own solar or natal chart to see where this is going to fall. Typically, the natal chart, this has to do with those of you who are Virgo rising, is really front and center, because this is what, if you get a reading, by and large, it's going to be using your natal chart, because this is supposed to be the chart that deals with mundane events in your life, the day-to-day things. It's more like a predictive type of thing. Not that you can't also consult based on your sun sign, but just this is what is typically used. So you're going to have to see, for instance, what your rising sign is and when exactly. Well, I mean, you don't need to know the exact degree of your rising sign, but your 8th house cusp, what degree of Aries is it, so that you know when it's going to go in there. Because it might not be this year. It could, if it's a later degree, it could very well not be this year. Both of these planets are going back into Pisces, into your 7th house, in the latter part of 2025. So just to let you know that it's not going to stay in Aries in all of 2025. So when Neptune goes into your 8th house, you're looking at a planet that rules a water house, namely the 12th house. That's the house that Neptune rules under the sign of Pisces, your opposite sign. And so when Neptune goes into this 8th house, which is also a water house, because Scorpio is a ruler of this 8th house and is a water sign, it's going to have, you could call it a similar theme. There will be differences, but it really enhances this mystical kind of influence coming into this metaphysical, esoteric, occult house of the 8th house. So it can even enhance your desire to do I was going to say meditation, but I really meant the tarot or astrology. It can enhance your desire to talk to the dead, because the eighth house can be about death, because that's transformation. But um, I would say like channeling can be eighth house. You go into a trance and then you're able to channel. Well, Neptune can just increase that desire or ability to do so. Maybe you discover that you're able to. Neptune can be about drugs. So, eighth house can be about, you know, if you want to access certain realms. With Neptune here, first of all, I think it can make you more sensitive to drugs, and this includes alcohol. And I remember reading in a book once that when you go into a bar, a tavern, a bar, that there are spirits, like disembodied entities, that hang out there because they're looking for hosts, kind of like parasites, because they are looking for people that they can feel that, you know, that intoxication that they had when they were alive. So it's like kind of like ghosts that want to kind of, you know, haunt people, but they don't really want to haunt them. They just want to kind of feed off of them. And I also, I mean, that's alcohol. And they said that, why do you think they call it spirits? I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but yeah. And maybe that's why some people go crazy when they get drunk, is because they're just like completely possessed by some lower astral entities. And even with psychedelics like plant medicines, I was watching this couple who not only has used them, but they work on people who have, you know, done like ayahuasca journeys, plant medicine journeys. And they said some of these people have, they're kind of got all these entity attachments. So that tells me in and of itself that these kinds of practices, you have to be very on the ball and figure out like whether or not it's really for you, because there might be some downsides to them. And you know, these types of lower astral entities, I feel like they're always looking for some kind of a way to invade our space. And we have to be very self-protective. So when Neptune, because Neptune is about not having boundaries, so you could let your guard down. When Neptune is in the eighth house, and because you have this spiritual influence, and Neptune, you know, because it is about drugs, but it's also about spirituality, it can be about wanting that intoxication of God. And that's why I think sometimes people, they do these, you know, these plant medicines because they're trying to kind of have a shortcut to enlightenment and to communing with God. And I just don't feel personally that that you can do that. I could be wrong, but I just think that it, even if you can experience some of that, it might come at a price. So be very aware of that, because Neptune can be about deception. And so there could be some deception around these practices or your experiences with these things. And that could also include any kind of a healer, you know, or if you belong to something like Wicca or paganism, be careful that you are doing things for the right reasons and that you are involved with people that are also, you know, taking things to a higher level. Because sometimes people are doing things because they're like, maybe they feel disempowered and they want to become powerful, but you can never do it at another person's expense. So any kind of like manipulation of other people from covert means, like casting spells on people, that we could call the black magic, those kinds of things. Really be above board in everything that you do, because you're working with a lot of power and energy. You may have a lot of more at your disposal, spiritual power at your disposal to work on. This could elevate your spiritual awakening, because you've already had, you've had Uranus in Taurus for years now. And Uranus really adds like that Uranian or galactic kind of influence to this house, that, or actually be probably more your belief systems than anything else. If you have pretty traditional religious beliefs, I'm sure a fair number of Virgo people do, this totally, I wouldn't say like throws a monkey wrench in it, but it kind of adds to that in a very unusual kind of a way. And with Neptune in the 8th house, it just gets even more curiouser and curiouser. So yeah, and also be careful of things like the Ouija board, things that people use to communicate with spirits, because again, you might attract those deceptive spirits. And there are things like the Ouija board that are said to be like portals, tools for portals that like these lower astral entities that you don't want to mess with. So, just putting it out there in case that might resonate for anybody. So this can also, since this is the house of other people's money, be careful about any kind of deception that can occur. If you are coupled and your partner is not being forthcoming, you could get a nasty surprise. I would say Saturn would do the honors probably, because Saturn can be very reality check. But also when Neptune goes retrograde, that can be the time when the person's like, whoa, what happened here? That your partner has been not saving their money when they said that they were, if you have separate bank accounts and you just don't know everything about it, or that they have been going into the joint bank account, something that you were not aware of it. So it's very good to be always on top of your finances, whether your joint finances or with your partner, their finances, so that you know where everybody stands, because this can be somebody else's money, and there could be deception associated with it, or maybe like some sort of will, where there might be somebody who's trying to take from others. And these kinds of things can be very contentious. And you may be blindsided by someone who you have a connection with, some source of money, and it could be an unpleasant surprise. So keep that in mind as well. And in terms of Saturn is going, Neptune enters Aries on March 30th, and Saturn enters on the 24th of May during Gemini season. And so this can be like something where you feel a sense of duty when it comes to other people's money. Typically, what I would say this would be most likely happening with would be if you have been called by a family member. Typically, it would be a parent to take care of their finances. They trust you. They think that you're the one that they want. Well, if you have other siblings, and maybe if there has always been a sibling rivalry, that could lead to kind of drama within the family. Maybe you would be the perfect person to do it. You're a Virgo after all. So typically Virgos have a good head on their shoulders, and they might be good with money. They're an earth sign, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't lead to other kinds of issues. So keep that in mind, because that could, there could be like a challenging part of that. Saturn can mean that your spouse, for whatever reason, whether they're retiring, whether they're going from full-time to part-time, or they're working in for another employer and making less money, or another, they've changed careers and they make less money now, and you have to step up to the plate. Saturn can be about responsibility. You might have to step up to the plate and earn more money yourself. Yes, I suppose in some cases you might have to do it all, but I'm also thinking that you simply may have to just take on more of the earning responsibilities versus that person. With Saturn, there could be a reality check. And again, the scenario that I already posed about a partner's income, this could certainly, along with Neptune, there could be a disillusionment, because you may have thought that your partner was going to make more money than they actually did. And you have to kind of scale down your expectations, or even some kind of inheritance that you thought was going to be one way turns out to be another. And because Saturn is restrictive, it might be less than you had hoped or that you expected, and you have to scale down your expectations, or same with your partner's money. And in terms of your partner's money, like for instance, let's say you're a newlywed, and you thought that your partner was going to remain in a certain type of career, and they say that they can't stand it and they're just going to go into something else, and it makes a lot less money because it's a certain type of work that makes less money. Well, that can be something where there has to be an adjustment, and it could be a little bit disillusioning if you thought you were going to live at a certain level that you now all of a sudden are not living at. So all of these things, when it involves other people's money, can take place, but it can also make you aware of the future. And you may be, ultra serious right now about planning for the future and things of that nature. Watch out for any kind of even like deception. I'm talking about with Neptune, that involves investments. I think technically that would be more like the fifth house, which is speculation, and including gambling and stuff like that, especially gambling. But that's how I see the stock market anyway. So because the eighth house can be death, you may get a reality check about death. There's a poem by Dylan Thomas, who, by the way, was a Scorpio. And it's one of the things that he wrote. It was the last line of this poem that was called Refusal to Mourn a Child Dead in Wales, where he was from. He was a Welsh poet. And he said, after the first death, there is no other. And that still gives me chills. And I still think it's true. It's like when you experience the death of somebody that you love, it takes everything out of you. And you might, and I'm not even talking about somebody from your family. It could be somebody that's not even related to you, somebody that you really cared for that is now gone from the physical realm. It's like nothing can, it's almost like it immunizes you from future death, because it is such a loss that you have to mourn. And so I'm not saying that everybody who has this, every Virgo person is going to have to deal with this, but it could be something about the reality of life and death for you. And actually, that's not a bad thing, because you're an earth sign and you might have the tendency to be so preoccupied with being healthy that you forget that physical life is temporary. And you can really get obsessive. You can get OCD about health that really it's about a fear of death. So this could actually cure your fear of death. And maybe it has nothing to do with somebody dying. Maybe it's your spiritual development. Maybe it has to do with that Neptune. Maybe you have some kind of, spiritual experience that confirms that, there's nothing to worry about. Yeah, so I think I covered everything that I wanted to. It's really weird because I thought that I was doing Scorpio's reading and I got it mixed up, and I was thinking that this was Scorpio's 8th house. So I did this like video, for Scorpio for this house with those 2 planets, and it took me like 28 minutes, and I'm like, wait, something's wrong here. I mean, if it's 7 minutes less, I'm probably leaving a lot of things out, but I think I covered everything I wanted to. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you would like a private reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Bye.